I want you to picture this scenario. You're driving away from a hangout with some new ish friends when you find yourself entering into your classic spiral. You're incessantly ruminating about how you showed up, if you were too dominant in your conversation, too talkative, if you seemed stiff and uncool and rigid, if you were too introverted at times. You're playing back every interaction that you had during your hangout. When you're alone, you take no issue with your own personality. It's often not until you're with others that you begin to question your personality. So, before we get into that and answer the big question of this episode, which is should you change your personality to attract new friends? Before we dive into that here on the Friend Forward podcast, I want to show you a clip of two women that I spoke to during my travels last summer on my book tour. And I asked this particular pair of friends what it was that they liked about each other's personalities.
She's fucking funny as hell. Sorry, can I swear? Can I?
To be your authentic
I don't.
self.
I don't know if I can swear or not. She's so funny. Like, yeah, and just like really nice and like down to earth. And so it's so true though. Like, it's very true. And then yeah, once we just like met, and then we decided we're gonna be friends. I was like, well, yeah, it's pretty straightforward to me. So I didn't really have any second thoughts about it.
I love her. What about you? What do you value most about her? What do you appreciate most?
She's so genuine. like it's to the point where like I could come to her with anything and she'd be like, I get it.
So true.
Like I could tell her the most horrid, absolutely disgusting thing I did, like, and she'll be like, done it, been there, done that.
If you take any basic intro to psychology class, you're going to hear about something called the Big Five personality traits. So if you've never heard of it before, I'm going to walk you through it. And then after we look at each of the 5 dimensions of personality, I want us to look at a particular study that dared to ask, how does your personality impact how you form and maintain friendships over time? So let's first unpack the Big Five personality traits, okay? There are 5 of them, and each one of them it's actually a family of traits, but more broadly just a trait, right? And people use the acronym OCEAN to help you remember each of the traits. So the O stands for openness, open to experiences. This is the degree to which you are open to new ideas, you're open to adventure. Then you have C, which is all about conscientiousness. And this is one of my favorites. This is all about a person's their adherence to the standards, right? To the rules. So people would often characterize a person who's high in this particular dimension as being reliable, trustworthy. They're probably very organized. They are very dutiful. They take very seriously their obligations to others, right? So if they said they're going to do something, they're going to do it because they believe that's what you're supposed to do. So a person who's high in conscientiousness, that would kind of describe them, okay? Now the E in the OCEAN acronym stands for extroversion, a word you've surely heard and have probably used hundreds of times. The degree to which you are talkative and gregarious and, outspoken and initiate things socially. The A stands for agreeableness. So if you're high in this particular dimension on that spectrum, you are probably very cooperative. You are collaborating with others, right? It doesn't necessarily speak to a passiveness. So, agreeable is not exactly a synonym for just not having your own mind, right? But you are highly cooperative. Okay. A person who's low on the end of that spectrum would not be described as collaborating with others. Maybe they're offering a lot of pushback and dominating and going against the grain for things. Then there's the N, which stands for neuroticism. Neuroticism mostly captures a lot of those negative emotions. And again, I mean, if you've watched Inside Out or Inside Out 2, what did we all learn from that? That negative emotions aren't necessarily bad, that they have a constructive function, right? But Neuroticism is all about a lot of those negative emotions. So, anger, anxiety, fear, worrying, um, really being overly attuned to like what people thought about the thing that you did, or having high levels of pessimism and cynicism, right? So, that kind of is what neuroticism, that particular personality dimension, is all about. Okay. So, all of these things together kind of make up our personality. But the question becomes, to what degree is that impacting your friendships? And should you change them? A couple things to keep in mind. One is that our personalities do continue to change as we live. I know some people like to think, well, I'm me and I'm the same me I've always been, and maybe in some ways, but everyone's personality gradually changes as you continue to live. In between the ages of 20 to 40 is when you're going to experience the most significant changes in your overall personality. But we are in a culture, in a time when you have so many people emphasizing your true self and not needing to change for other people and be authentic and show up as you, right? And I think a while ago, I would have agreed with that. I no longer agree with that. And let me tell you why. I want to share with you the findings of a study titled On Friendship Development and the Big Five Personality Traits. This was conducted by Kelci Harris and Simine Vazire at University of Victoria and University of California, Davis, respectively. So let's look again those five dimensions we talked about and look at how, according to this study, it does impact your friendships. I'm going to end by showing you tangible things you could do to change those things. Openness. So, when it comes to forming friendships, a person who is high in openness might have a larger social network than a person who is low in openness, but they don't necessarily have deeper friendships, right? Because if you're open to new experiences, you probably are more receptive to the idea of meeting new people, listening to them, entertaining some of their ideas. So, that probably positions you to invite a lot of people into your life. When it comes to maintaining friendships, openness could be helpful when it comes to navigating conflict. So think about when you're disagreeing or you have a certain perspective, the other person has a certain perspective, y'all are going back and forth. A person who is able to entertain another perspective. That person's probably doing better during times of disagreement, during times of relational gridlock, right? So it can come in handy in those particular ways. And then also how it can impact you in maintaining friendships. If you are finding that you have issues a lot of times with conflict, I mean, how stubborn or rigid or close minded are you during those kinds of disagreements? Something to consider. Now let's move on to the C in the OCEAN acronym, which is conscientiousness. Now, conscientiousness doesn't necessarily have much influence when you're first meeting someone or you're trying to make a good first impression, okay? But it does play a major role in maintaining friendships. This person's probably following through with what they said that they're going to do, and a person who honors commitments is likely perceived well by other people. Now, they find that extroversion could be helpful in those very, very, very fresh initial first impressions because a person who's coming up to you, you perceive that person as a liker, like a person who likes other people, because here they are engaging in a pro social behavior, they're coming to you. And the research also finds that we tend to like people who like us. So if a person's being extroverted, talkative, and gregarious to you, you think they like me and you find yourself liking them back. So it can be helpful in those very, very fresh, initial, raw first moments of meeting a person. But extroversion doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say contribute to, but it's not necessarily directly correlated to the quality of a friendship. Now, it can be helpful over time in maintaining friendships, and that a person who has more of an extroverted type spirit or energy is probably more comfortable addressing conflicts when they arise, which helps to keep the friendship going, right? If it's healthy conflict. And they also find that people who are extroverted might be more willing to engage in self disclosure. Now, if you've read my book in chapter 2, we talk about the three affinities of female friendship, the three things that really bond women in their same sex platonic interactions. And we talk about secrecy And we talk about how women like to engage in a space of mutual self disclosure where I share, you share. That is the glue of women's friendships. So, according to this study, people who are high in levels of extroversion probably engage in that more, which might make another person feel like they want to reciprocate. So it can be helpful in that way in keeping a friendship going. Now, as you can imagine, a person who's high in levels of extroversion also typically has larger social networks because they're gregarious and outgoing and they are initiating conversations with people, hangouts with people. And that's probably just like by as a numbers game. Okay, that person, if we look at probability, if they're engaging that way more often, they probably also are gathering and collecting more and more people into their circle at a faster rate compared to a person who is more introverted. Another thing that I think is worth noting here, and I love that we can like deep dive now that I'm on YouTube, we can go like a little bit deeper and longer a little bit with the content. Is there's a study from 2008 that does find that people who are higher in levels of extroversion do report having a better well being. Now, that doesn't surprise me because they probably have larger social networks, and the research finds that people with social networks that are larger do report being happier and having a higher well being than people who don't, only up to some degree. So it's not like a person with 100 friends is exponentially happier than a person with one. A woman with 100 friends, she's not happy, she's exhausted. Okay. I don't think it's necessarily like you're just so extroverted and that equals happiness. I think it's because if you have a lot of social connections that you're maintaining, it says something about your lifestyle, not necessarily just you as a person and your degree of likability, right? Because if I have, mom friends, sorority friends, my church friends, happy hour friends, that kind of relational diversity, it indicates something about how I operate and navigate the world. So it probably shows that I'm at happy hour with people. Having mom friends means I have people to help share resources with me for parenthood. If I have workout buddies, it says that I'm working out and going to the gym. Church friends speaks to how engaged I am spiritually. I'm just kind of generalizing here, right? But that's why all these things, I think, with people having lots of different friends and friend types, because relational diversity plays a role, that extroversion kind of powers that. And I wonder, how they're connected. Lifestyle, extroversion, and your personality. Interesting, right? Okay, when it comes to agreeableness and the role that it plays on forming and maintaining friendships, spoiler alert, the study finds that it's the number one dimension or personality trait that plays a role on the quality of your friendships. Mm-hmm. Your degree of agreeableness. Now, I looked at other studies because there are others that explored personality at the intersection of friendship, and they found the same thing. It's agreeableness. Let's dive in and see exactly what that looks like. And as we do, I want you to kind of honestly evaluate yourself. This speaks to your degree of helpfulness, collaboration, compassion. And let's keep in mind here, oh my gosh, let's keep in mind that friendship is a completely elective relationship, meaning I don't have to be here. I am choosing to be here. Okay. So if this is an elective relationship and I'm not obligated to be here the way I might be in a familial relationship with my child or my mother, right? Or a romantic relationship where I feel like it's governed by the documents we signed to stay married or whatever it is, right? But it's platonic relationship, meaning I can hop in and hop out if I wanted to. Don't you think it helps to be agreeable because I don't have to be here? So to be compassionate and helpful and supportive and collaborative, it keeps a friendship going. It also finds that people who have this trait inspire reciprocity in others, that when you are agreeable and cooperative, people are more inclined to give it back. They're also more likely selected to be friends over people who are disagreeable. And because people who are high in this dimension are typically more pro social and reciprocal, it is huge. It is huge and plays such a gigantic role in enhancing the quality of a friendship. Now, there's more I want to say on agreeableness, especially in the aspect of like gender and how that plays a role, but I'm going to save that for office hours. If you're not familiar, office hours is the name of our Patreon. You can join anytime at betterfemalefriendships.com. Go to the podcast page and it will show you how to join us. But on our Patreon, which we call office hours, we go a little bit deeper. I'll meet you over there. Okay. Now, after agreeableness, the study finds that neuroticism has the most impact on relationship quality. Let's look at neuroticism because this is a rough one, and I need you to bring a spirit of self reflection to the table. We are going to look in just a second at how we can modify where we are and how we're doing with these different dimensions in just a second. But let's unpack neuroticism first. Let me break it down for you. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this excerpt of the Friend Forward podcast. The full episode is always being held exclusively at our Patreon, which we refer to as office hours. So come hang out with us at office hours in order to enjoy the full, complete episode. See you next time.